From the First Coast News Studios, this is On Point with your host, Shannon Ogden.
In an unprecedented public smackdown of the Republicans in the state legislature, the Florida Supreme Court ordered an ambitious refiguring of the state's congressional district. Joining us, our old friend, not old, but you know, we've known him a long time, Dr. Mike Bender. Good to see you from the University of North Florida. Were you surprised by this ruling?
A little bit, yeah. The original ruling that we dealt with last year, the legislature they revamped a couple of districts, most notably District 5,
right.
Green Brown's district. They said okay, or the judge said okay, and yeah, the Supreme Court. I'm a little surprised by this ruling.
You know, when they had in 2010, after the voters approved the constitutional amendment, I remember Senator Thrasher and some other folks having these like public tours around the state of talking about how we're going to draw the new map and all of that, and at least the perception, and I know that was the point of it, was this was a very public thing.
Sure. And
that was one specific thing that the Supreme Court's not done. In fact, they really wagged their finger hard and said, shame on you guys, you did this in private.
Yeah, and the interesting part about this is the Republicans said this is going to be the most open process. And you know what? It was the most open process in Florida's history by a long shot. They used to literally do this entirely in back rooms. They'd come out, they'd put a map up, you'd vote on it, and that was it. Nobody had any idea. At least some of it was out. Now, Florida and their sunshine laws are more stringent probably than almost any other state in the country. So the fact that any of this was behind closed a problem that the court had.
All right, so here's basically what the thing is. The court said you need to do a special session. You need to fix what we told you to fix, these 8 districts, maybe the 14 that touch these 8 districts, and have it done quickly because we want it done by next year's election. And I think qualifying for candidates is May, so that's a lot of work, and that has to be done really fast. Here's the thing, Mike. These are the same guys being asked to change it that did it poorly the first time, according to the court.
That's correct.
Hello, Fox. Would you care to guard this henhouse for us once again?
But there are some very specific things that they're having the legislature do this time. So, for example, I alluded to Green Brown's district.
Right.
Her district runs really weird down to Orlando from Jacksonville, most gerrymandered district in the country.
Yeah.
It's now been ordered to run east-west, which is a completely different direction. So all the districts that are touching that are going to be manipulated. Also, Jolly's district down in Tampa, that got ordered to be changed. There's a little piece that crosses Tampa Bay that bleeds into, that said you have to make this part of the same district. So there are some very specific things that the court ordered the legislature to do.
And it is very funny because it's very clear language, even before this order, that congressional districts are supposed to make an attempt to follow natural boundaries and be a reasonable shape. And you look at the 5th, and it's absolutely
But
not.
there's a lot of other things that compete with that. So, for example, what Green Brown's going to talk about is minority representation.
Right. I want to talk about that. So immediately, this time, like she has done in other times where the shape of her district has been challenged, Congresswoman Brown has said, listen, the Voting Rights Act was made for this purpose, to give minorities a voice in Congress. Is that a valid argument in the light of what the state Supreme Court said?
It depends what they do with the new district. If they make that new district similar, high 40s as far as what the black voting age population looks like, it's unlikely that for the state or the federal Supreme Court would say that's not enough. That would probably be enough. What's interesting, though, is when you move this district to run east-west, that opens up a lot. She hasn't faced much serious competition the last few elections. Suddenly, with a brand new district, she's almost like a challenger. So you could have some people coming in that might challenge her, and that potentially could get very interesting.
So how do we even know what the mechanics of this process will be? How quickly they can get everybody back to Tallahassee and start?
Well, I mean, it doesn't take that long. Literally, you can draw these maps in a week or not.
Well, I can't draw a convincing circle, but yeah.
A little GIS, these things are ready to go. It's not that complicated. The process is getting 120 and then 40 senators to agree on this type. That's where the action's going to be.
But can't really, the power remains, regardless of what the court said, when they want this done in time for next year's election, the power still remains within the Republican-controlled legislature.
Yes.
They could take a super long time. They could fight. The Democrats could never agree. They might not be able to agree on everything. And they could intentionally do this to drag it out past the deadline. There's nothing stopping them, really.
I would find that very unlikely for one main reason. One is, even when you redraw these districts, if you look at this from a perspective of how many Ds and Rs there are in Congress at the end of the day, that's probably not going to change. And if it is, it's maybe only by 1 or 2. And heck, the Republicans might even pick up a seat. These districts might have to be changed. And if you do that, if you delay, you run the risk of the court stepping in. And they did say, we're not going to do this time, but we do reserve the right, if you drop the ball, to do these districts ourselves, in which case it would be completely out of their hands. So they're really incentivized to get this done.
Last point here, Mike. Right now, we have, of course, 27 congressional districts, 17 Republicans, 10 Democrats representing this state. What is the likelihood of that breakdown changing significantly with a new map?
16-11, 18-9.
Yeah.
I think that's about as far as it goes. Maybe if there's a big Democratic tide in 2016, maybe you get to 15-12, but I don't see it going much beyond that.
Well, thanks for coming in and interrupting part of your summer, and always good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, my best to everybody at the mighty Osprey Nation there. And next, what you can't apparently say at the Duval County Courthouse. We're going to get into that next.